Be'ezer Hashem Parshas Boy Tavshin Pei Gimel. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos that when someone is learning Chochmah Satoira, you have to watch out. It shouldn't be Chochmosai Meruba Mimaisov. It says Reb Chanina ben Doisa said, Kol Shemaisa Meruba Men Chochmosai is someone's actions, his being Mekayim the mitzvahs is more than his Chochmah, then the wisdom is gonna stay around. Chachmosim is kayemes. It's gonna have a kiyum. If a person's wisdom, if the chachma is more than the maisim, then ein chachmosim is kayemes. Now, in the world of Bitachon, when we're learning Bitachon, what would that mean? That would mean like a person could be learning about Bitachon, studying about Bitachon, understanding a bit better. But if they're not going to have actual examples in their life and challenges which are going to force them to actually apply what they learned, then whatever they learned is going to be forgotten, and even the chokhmah doesn't stay around with a person. It means the Mishnah is actually tying together the actual practice of a person that is living his life the right way with learning about it. That if a person also applies it when they have those challenges, then the wisdom could stay. That's like a keli, it should stay around. But if not, then the chokhmah is not miskayim, which means that he doesn't, not only that he doesn't get to apply it lamaisa, it also is going to wander away, he's going to forget it or whatever. It's not going to really stay by the person if a person only learns it. Now, it's a very interesting nakuda to understand while we're learning how to apply bitachon l'maisa when a person has challenges. We see from this Mishnah something that we could sometimes feel. When someone learned the concept of bitachon, but they didn't actually get to use it in real life, they didn't have the challenge, and it could be forgotten. People learn a lot of things. Sometimes it's beautiful, but then you learn different things that you forget. But if someone went through a real tough challenge, and they worked on themselves, and they were chazering bitachon while they were going through the challenge, not to act the way you're not supposed to, not to speak the way you're not supposed to, they were trying hard, even if they don't get 100. Let's say they got a 75, but they're going to remember it 20 years later. That's a simon for this Mishnah. That means, why? Why is that 20 years later you're going to remember something? Because it goes very deep into the nefesh, very deep into the person. Because the person has a challenge, they're vulnerable, they need something to keep them going. So it's like they're taking the bitachon and they're putting it into their mind to give them their chiyas back. Because while they're having a challenge, they're falling apart. So then, and only then, it becomes part of them. But if a person is sitting back and they're learning beautiful concepts of bitachon, then it didn't become part of them because they were good. They were just learning about it. It didn't end up being that was their lifeline while it was happening. Now, many times when a person is reaching out to learn about bitachon while they're in the challenge already, ongoing crisis, they wouldn't be able to get insurance, let's say, it's already deep in, and they're looking how to survive, and they're learning bitachon then, and they're applying it right away, because they're in an emergency matziv. So such a type of learning of bitachon will also have a kiyum, will also last, because they're actually learning it only because they don't know how to, they need it now, lamaisa, because of the challenge that they're in the middle. But if a person is only learning about it when he's comfortable, it doesn't have the same kiyum. That's why you could have two people that were in the same class, taking the same course, learning the same chavis alvavas, and one person had changed his life, the other person, nothing happened. And they both were listening, participating, but the answer is very simple. The person that was going through a challenge while they were learning it was right away, every day, taking it and saying, so 1 second, so what do I have to do different? They were practicing it, torch day that they were learning it. And that's the whole reason why they were learning it. And they used it to survive. So automatically, it rewired the brain right away. That's something very important. This can give us a deeper understanding in the famous Mishnah that a person should always have Torah im derech eretz, which usually is explained that a person should be learning and a person should have a job. A person should be earning money. Because if a person doesn't have Torah, then of course they're not going to be successful in life and they're not going to be able to do progress in Avodas Hashem. But once again, the Ikar Chiddush from that Mishnah is that even if a person will have Torah, as long as they don't have Derech Eretz, it could be he's going to end up in the wrong place. Or because he won't have enough money, he's going to be doing things that are not the way it's supposed to, because they're trying to survive without having a real income. So that's why it's so important. You should have Torah in Derech Eretz to give structure to life. You learn Torah, you go to work, and many manhigim, not to go into if the Reb Shamshel for her or whatever, we're very busy with this Mishnah that the person has to see to have both parts of life. And the Chovos HaLevavos actually brings this Mishnah when he explains why people have to go to work. You don't have to come on to later Shittas and Ashkof. It's the Chovos HaLevavos inside talks about it. You have to learn and you have to do something to go to work. But here, after we learn about Bitachon, how important it is to apply it in the Lemaisidige world, it gives us a deeper understanding to it. Which is that if a person is only learning and they don't have the opportunity how to practice in the actual challenges of life, then they don't have the Torah either. Because it can never go in as deep as when a person is actually in a matziv that they have to apply it into their personal life. So if a person has Torah im derech eretz doesn't have to mean exactly going to work. Derech eretz means you're living the life, the system of life. That's really what derech eretz means in the literal taich. You're going through the system of life. If it is that a person has to help at home, if it's that a person has to go deal with issues and challenges that they have with buying an apartment, it doesn't make a difference. If you learn and then you have the derech eretz of now handling all these challenges the way you were taught, that's when a person could actually take that Torah and put it into the person. So it's not like you have to have gashmias and ruchnias. It's the opposite. You have to have two levels of ruchnias. One is to learn, and then the harder part is to see if you were matzliach to make yourself a different type of person that's totally a Torah type of person. Whatever they do, they know how to do it right. They know how to do it the way the Torah wants them, how to act the way the Torah wants them to act. And if your person doesn't have that derech eretz, then you could find sometimes it's very sad. It's very, very sad. But sometimes you can find people that they could be sitting and learning for many, many hours. But then the way they act, it's really horrible. It's very nakashmak to see it or even to talk about it. But we must remember this concept. So the derech eretz is actually taking the Torah and putting it into the person to check, to test the person where he's up to, what's the situation. Now let's explain it. It's the same concept, which is from a different angle. It's interesting. Not everybody is aware of this concept. Torah cannot get absorbed into a person only if they have these challenges and they are actually applying the Torah. It doesn't get absorbed into the person. He could be a huge Talmid Chacham. He could be spending hours. But that's what it says. It says, if Torah is meruba, if Chachmos is meruba mi'ma'asav. Let's explain that Mishnah. It has to be evened out. You have to have a certain kind of balance, so that the Torah that you're learning should actually be connected and it should become part of the person. Ad kedei kach, that the Sfas Emes says that what should a person do if he's a genius? He asks the kasha on the Mishnah. If a person is a regular So he learns, he tries to do mitzvahs. What is the person supposed to do if he has chokhmas shloime, he called it? So then, what should he do? It's always going to be chokhmas meruba mimaisef. So the Sfas Emes, he gives two answers. One answer is, don't worry, there's always enough maisim to do. So you should. Then he says maybe the Mishnah didn't talk about such a person in the sense of in the literal meruba. Maybe such a person is possible that chokhmas should be meruba mimaisef. But you could see from the kasha and the teres and the Sfas Emes that really a regular person is not only supposed to be that he does a mitzvah every day, tries to do something. I did my chesed for the day. It's fascinating. A person is supposed to be balanced. That shouldn't be chachmos meruba mimaisef. And the reason for that is because it can get absorbed. If a person is learning and he's not applying it, so he's not making it be part of his ramach shasa, of his body. It became part. So constantly a person knows that when he closes the Gemara and he closes the Sefer, and now he's going to whatever it is, that's the harder part.
That's in the Geras Ramban. When you close the Sefer, think if there's something you can...
Things that the Geras Ramban says, when you make sure every time you close the Sefer, think, what can I take along with me? What can I change now? What can I do different? And that is all part of the concept that the Rebbe Soloveitch is trying to explain, that a person was meant to be exposed, to totally be exposed in this world to all kinds of challenges and yetzihoras of all types, and they should try to see how to do it al pi the Torah, and that's going to give them the kinyan in the Torah that they learned. That's going to make them be a Torah to person be'emes, because they applied it on the mice. Now, from another angle, totally different angle. Not long ago, a young man asked this question. Many people have it. When we discussed about a shir, but now let's see it from a different angle. He said that there's a lot of svarim that they speak about the heiligkeit, the holiness of Shabbos. Shabbos is the Gesuda, the Shechina is there, and the table is like a mizbeach, and it's like the chalas, there's a shulchan, there's a menorah, a lot going on, and Ruach HaKodesh. And he says, I have 5 little kids, under the age of 5, under the age of 6. He says I'm like 25, 26. He says, all I know about a Suda is spilling and breaking, putting on the bib, taking off the bib, putting kids to sleep, fighting. That's all I know about. He says, what were the Svarim talking about? Could someone explain to me? No, I don't understand it. Well, I'm not even doing anything wrong. I'm coming in, and this is the reality. So how could it be that the Torah or this or whatever are talking about a different reality when I'm trying to do what's right? And even when it does work out, quote unquote, it's totally something else, a different song. You were singing something totally different. And now this is a challenge that people have in different. It's not only in a Shabbos Gesut with little kids. Constantly, you close a sefer, and then when you actually get into the business, it's messy. It's totally not what is there in the sefer. So the Sforim explain a very interesting, practical mahalach, how to be able to handle this matziv and not fall from your madrega, which is, the more der hoiben, the more elevated a person is, because what they learned, and because, let's say, they said to them, give an example, someone Friday afternoon, they helped, they finished preparing for Shabbos Thursday night, the Shabbos table, the food, everything. An example. Nobody should get hurt if they're not up to that. Massive. It happened. And now Friday, for example, Friday morning they finished up until 11, 12, whatever. Now the family is sitting and saying Shia Shirim and saying Tehillim. The kids were out, okay? The babysitter took out the children. No one should feel like a failure if it didn't happen. Let's say it happened because there was massive help. And now, when this man came, people, mother, father, whatever, were after a nice few hours of just plain learning and davening and singing to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Now, what would happen if kids walk in And now kids are doing whatever kids do. It's interesting to watch that you have a much bigger chance to be successful and to remember the holiness of Shabbos after such a hachana, even though the situation by the Suda is the exact the same. That means when a person is totally elevated, they can handle katnas. They can handle stupid fighting. Why? Because what happens is they don't get absorbed and schlepped in to the fight. I told you, I didn't tell you, stand there. They're like, they're distant. They're not in the same matzav in the adrega. They're removed from it benefesh. So now they're observing a matzav, the two children, so that they could be there and be the adult and say, oh, it's a Shabbos, what did you want? You wanted this? Okay, I think you handle it with so much more chokhmah, with so much more yishuv hadas. And it lasts, however long it lasts. I mean, it usually depends how elevated the person is, or how big the nisayon was, but it could last for half an hour, for 40 minutes. It's usually like one sentence where you feel like, that now I lost it. You could feel it, but when a person knows to observe it, then you could make it from 40 minutes into 45, whatever. You could chap the concept. So it means, let's go back. There's a very big yisoid. It's a very, very big yisoid. It means that the Rebbeinu Shalom made situations of katnas in a person's life. Katnas we call very. We had the word, one of the shiurim, we spoke about it. Very small-minded. Okay. Small-minded, things that are like very nitty-gritty or very stam. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave us tons of that. Then the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us Torah and Tefila, where a person could disconnect from the whatever's going on in this world. And the concept was that now you're going to have the tools to be able to handle it, because you are so elevated. Now, this is the opposite what people sometimes think. I sometimes give a mashal from a mashgiach in yeshiva. I don't mean anybody. It's just sometimes it comes up to my head. That day that the mashgiach comes in, and all of a sudden he's throwing out kids, and he says, "Oh, you were chutzpahdik now. I don't want to see you here," and he's screaming, whatever. It's not the day he got up early, and he learned before davening, and he said to them, "No." And not only that, when he's screaming about the Bittul Torah, it's not because it's the exact opposite. When he was good and a good matziv, and he learned and he davened or whatever, that's when he could handle Bittul Torah. That's what it is. As painful as it is, but that's the truth. That means he could walk over and he could say, the Gemara, wouldn't you want to just connect to this? Instead of like, what were you doing now? What were you doing there right now? Get out of here. And it's fascinating. But the more elevated a person is, the more he could handle small-minded situations. That's how it goes. Because the reason for that is because you could see it differently. You could see the situation differently. You could, like we said, you're removed from the situation itself. You could bring that person up to wherever you are. But if you are down there, you don't have that option of bringing that person up. You can't now take that person and mimikareves because you're not there. So the only thing you can do is you can just get frustrated and share the frustration, convey your feelings. That's what happens to us. Now, where does that come into our share? Very simple, moridik simple. It's back and forth again. The concept that we're learning in the last few weeks in Chovos Halvavos. Person is learning about Bitachon, and then they're saying in real life, I don't know why it's not working for me. In real life, things are not so rosy the way it sounds like in the Psukim or in Chovos Halvavos. This is not simple, and this person is upset at me, and that person is doing something they're not supposed to. And how am I supposed to handle all that? Well, one of the ways is, the more a person, while they're learning, knows that I'm going to have to dive in to this world, and that's how this world is going to look. And the whole reason why the Rebbeinu Shalom gave me this opportunity to be able to disconnect from this world was all because I should be able to have the matziv of being in this matziv and be shemeya. You could listen to someone embarrass him and he doesn't answer. You have to be very in a good matziv to be able to handle that. The other day, I heard of a chosim. He was in the middle of his Sheva Brachas. And the apartment that the parents took for them was in a basement. And the water went up. It was, I think it was sewer water, but there was a leak in the situation that it was like a foot high. Now, the 7-8 pairs of shoes that was bought for the kala was swimming around. There were some boats taking different routes, and that was the situation. They had to pack the bags and go into the basement of a grandmother to be able to sleep over the night, whatever it is. Now, this chassan handled it beautifully. Mom, she was like, okay, it's fun, something exciting, giving color to the new couple. And then he observed, he was looking at himself, and he said, you know something? Why didn't I get all total lose it? Because when a person is so besimcha and in a good matziv, they know how to handle such zachen. So the concept is that a person is learning Torah, and then he's thrown into this world with all these situations, so he should be elevated. He says, but it's not working for me. So you have to change the way you're learning, the system you're learning, and do it in a way, because it's not about while I'm learning. It's all about to see how long could this continue on when I'm at a different matziv. And a person is not supposed to become a malach in a second. That means if a person could 15 minutes still have that matziv, that's amazing. So so it's 15 minutes, and now we can get to 20 after that, 25, half an hour. That's the concept. That's what the Chavis Abba says. He says, learn in the morning, go to work, first 20 minutes, Kodesh Lashem, in the work. Every sentence you say, the way you act, you're Kiddush Hashem, you're acting Kiddush Hashem, you're like a godel. That's how a person's supposed to feel. Like, I'm a godel b'Yisrael for now. What's a godel b'Yisrael? What they are like, the Torah is taking them over. The way they act, the way they speak, the way everything is 100% the way it's supposed to, with such a simcha. After I learn, for 20 minutes I act like that. That means I cheshbon. If it's a child, if it's an adult, if it's someone that comes my way, that rubs me the wrong way totally, say that. These 20 minutes, it's like that. That's when a person hops what's supposed to happen. And then they could push it up, like we said. Now, once we get to understand that, then we could go weiter. Now, when the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving a person an historian, we must learn that there are these two. We should broaden our vocabulary. There's something called the tzara, or we could call it yisurim, suffering, all that. And then there's something called a hardship. Many people don't know how to see the difference between what's a hardship and what's a tzara, a disaster, I'm sorry, I'm going through something terrible. There's something called, I'm going through a hardship. Now, it's very important to understand that. Why? Once a person labels the situation of them as yisurim, as suffering, as a tzara, then a person applies different parts of their mind. They're saying, okay, Rebbeinu Shalom is testing me. I'm now getting a oynish. I have to do tshuva. I am at fault. I wasn't at fault. They go into a certain mode. I should have. I shouldn't have. But when a person is given an opportunity, then they look at it very different. Now, when a person learns Torah, afterwards the Torah gives them the opportunity to be able to absorb it, to be able to apply it, to be able to be a different type of person. It wasn't a oynish, it wasn't yisurim, it wasn't a hardship. A hardship means that right now it takes koiches to be able to know how to handle it.
It's like if somebody finds an aveda, it's heavy or difficult to bring back. It's a hard thing to deal with, but it's a gift. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, if someone, it means someone gave him a present, let's say, but it's very hard to handle. It's sometimes Mishleach Monasen, you can't fit it through the door. You have to cut the door. So these are the truth is, I'm saying Mishleach Monas, but every time a new fridge, washing machine, etc. comes into a house, every time there's something going wrong, it doesn't fit through the door, and electricity is now made to this, not in the right place. Tutzach, every time. It's a hardship. No, it is frustrating. Be'emes is frustrating. And the guy forgot to tell you that he has to charge you now 4 times as much, because now they have to get a crane, and you actually have to move to be able to fit in the new fridge. But it's a hardship. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very frustrating. But a person knows this not got something, and now to handle. But in the moshel, people shouldn't take out ki'ilu ze'achayim. Sometimes people understand, listen, that's how it goes. But that's not accurate. When we're talking about such situations, we're talking about something that the Rebbeinu Shalom specifically designs for the person because they learned what they learned, and now I'm giving you an opportunity to be Mekayim that, and then you're going to be able to actually be koina. It's going to be you. You acquired it. It's yours, what you learned. It became part of you. So many nisyonis in life were built that way that the Rebbeinu Shalom is supposed to taking the person to a better spot. He feels like it's a tough ride. He feels like it's very scary in the middle. Okay, that's fine. I didn't say it's not a hardship. But it's nothing to do that the Rebbeinu Shalom is trying now to be manish the person. So many challenges are hardship. And it's specifically designed in the person's life. Sometimes it's the wife of the person, sometimes it's the employer. So every time it's different and unique. So a person should be able to be caught by surprise so he could try to really work himself out. Tonight is the Yortzeit from the Rebbe Zisha from Manipali. Very famous for his Midas Bitachon. But one of the most famous stories from this tzaddik is that the Rebbe Shmelka from Nikolsburg, they came, they were huge Talmidei Chachamim. They were Rosh Hashivas already before they came to the Maggid of Mezrich. And they came to the Maggid of Mezrich, and they told him that they don't understand how a person could be thanking on something that's going bad, on hardships. They can't understand how a person could actually thank. What I'm supposed to be thanking about this? It's terrible. So he told them that they should go to Rebbe Zisha, they should go to him, they should find him in that shul, in his little town, and they should ask him the question. And they came to him, he was sitting there, warming himself up by the fireplace, as they say the story, and he was an Onivevian. He had nothing, no means, nothing. His children didn't have what to eat. He didn't have what to eat. His clothing, ripped clothing. And then they asked him how a person could be thanking. And all he answered was that he can't believe, he wouldn't imagine the Maggid would send them to him. Because he never had a challenge. He never had something that was raw. So it was never negeya. Mastama was a mistake. Nothing ever happened. And then they understood something very deep. They understood that the real mahalach that a person is supposed to be working on is that they didn't chap that it was raw b'chlal. Because if then it's hard for the person to be thanking. So really, it expects the person to be able to be in a matziv that it's a challenge, but the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to help. So why am I getting so frustrated? And then I'm thanking that I'm frustrated. I have the bechira of not being frustrated in the first place. The Rebbe Zisha didn't have what to eat. It's famous, and he used to every time when he finished davening the whole avoid in the morning, it was noon already. He would say, "Rebbeinu Shalom, the Zisha is hungry." Yes, he said, "Is hungry," and every time the person that used to help him out would bring the food in, and that Mishamish, that Gabbai, was once thinking to himself, "Hey, that's not real Bitachon." Because he knows I'm going to bring the food. One day I'm not going to be there. Let's see if that's going to work or not. He decided Wednesday he's not around. Let's see what happens with his picking up his hands. Now the Maisa it's a very interesting story that the day before, Rebbe Zisha was going wherever he was going in the town there, and there was a very narrow road extremely narrow road, and there was only one person could go by it, and it was this choshev person. It wasn't choshev and learning. He had money, and he saw this poor man. And he wanted to just go by and not have to go to the side. So he just pushed him down into the mud and just kept on walking. And this is all these details of the story, but he found out that it was Rabbi Zisha. And he's very, very extremely apologetic. What does he do now? That Rabbi Zisha should be moichelim. So people advised him that he could be there, and when Rabbi Zisha says, "I'm hungry, Rabbi Shalom, help me," he would bring in the food instead of the gabbai, and then as he's bringing the food, he would ask him a mechila, and that's what he did. But it ended up being that Wednesday. It was that morning. He said, "Zisha's hungry," and this guy came running in with the food. He wanted to make sure he's before the other one, and then there's a gabbai that was always the guy saw that it's real. It doesn't make a difference who the Rabbi Shalom picks. Now, if we look into it, he didn't have food, he didn't have money, but he wasn't missing anything. He totally wasn't missing anything. He wasn't being Makabeh Surim Bahava, for an example. He wasn't doing that. He was like, you want to talk and be Makabeh Surim Bahava? Find somebody else, because I'm not that target, because Baruch Hashem, the Eibusha wasn't menaseh me. I didn't have these challenges. It's fascinating. But it's a different taich in what people are used to taiching, Gabiteach B'Hashem Chesed Yisayvevenu. Usually we say, if I'm going to be B'Teach Hashem, Rebbeinu Hashem, you better make sure the money comes in. I once had an interesting story in Gaman. He had a deal or something, and he needed there should be more money coming in, not $5, and it wasn't happening, and he was scared. It was getting messy. And it was making him crazy pressure. So he was talking that he needs tefillas. So I asked him, which tefillas do you need? To guide him what he should daven for. So he says, well, my wife says I have everything, I don't have Archovas Adas. Oh, that's beautiful. So you should daven for Archovas Adas. Why? Because of this deal, because of whatever's happening. Okay, so daven for Archovas Adas. What else? Oh, so people shouldn't be upset at me, because you could be, the investors or whatever. They could have time. Okay, what else? Oh, what else? The money should come in. That the money should come in. Now, that's where, first of all, he should be proud of himself that he said the third thing, not the first. But Rabbi Zisha would say, I'm davening for Archovas Adas and not to hurt any people. The money, who cares? Now, a person usually doesn't a person doesn't disconnect. They're like, what do you mean? If the money's not going to come in, then of course I'm not going to have Archovas Adas. That's the mistake. It's not true. It's our decision. We decided to connect the two and say, hey, Ren Shalom, if you don't give me the money, I promise you I'm not going to have Archovas Adas. Ask for Archovas Adas.
How do you do it then when it's Chav Lachrini, when your investors now lost the money and they're crying?
Chav Lachrini is very, very sensitive, extremely sensitive. People are crying. A person could daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom do things. Number one, I should be able to pay back every dollar because I want to do what's right. So that's fine. I want to pay it back. I don't want to be in a matzav that I did something that I made people lose money. But the person is asking to be Mekayim the Torah and to have Archovas Adas. If the Rebbeinu Shalom decides that right now is not the time yet, then he could ask for Archovas Adas in this matzav. It's not like he's not allowed to ask for Archovas Adas. He's asking the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's not in his hands. Totally not in his hands as of right now. Now, of course, it gets very sensitive when that's the matzav. But the Maisa, you could have Archovas Adas even in such a matzav. Now, a person when they are elevated could handle matzavim so strong that they don't have to daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom anymore, that those matzavim should go away. Ad kedei kach. That's what they feel. But it's a darga. It's a darga. Rabbi Yisrael didn't ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, we should please have food. He just said, when he was hungry, he said, I'm hungry. So there came food. He didn't have to store it. He didn't need to have a place to store the food because somebody else would prepare it. He only ate the food. He only did that part. When a person gets the Har Madrega, they feel that they're not stuck. Because why do I feel like I'm stuck? Because the situation is making my mind stuck. You know what? I asked the Rebbe should give me a Chavas Adas in this matziv.
But didn't say Be'odom Rishon he got stuck. There was no rain, no water, so that he would be misspelled for the Geshem.
No.
He was to say, okay, if I have a Adas, the Kodesh Baruch Hu didn't give water, he'll do what he does. He was waiting for his Tefila.
Oh, so this is the famous question. These two. So there's that Chazal say, Rashi says in Parshas Bereishis, that the Rebbe Shem is waiting for the Tefila of the person. So there's two answers to that question. Isn't the Rebbe Shem waiting for my Tefila? Why should I just play Hamar Chavas Hadas? The Rebbe Shem is waiting for my Tefila. He's waiting to give it to me. And Ingeman told me the other day they were planning to pay someone and they had a check in their pocket for a few weeks, a few $1,000s. They were just waiting for that person to ask them for the check. And the person called up, all hurt, said, why are you hurt? You didn't ask for the check. I'm having the check. It's prepared for a few weeks. Then that person told me that then they chapped, hey, wow, that's what it means in Chazal. The Rebbe Shem had the check and it's saying, just ask for it. So we have that versus we have, and maybe a person just supposed to be happy with their matziv. So there's two parts to the answer. Number one, that a person never knows if it's A or B. So a person always davens, and they daven for that Indian. If the Rebbe wants to give it to me, I know that only the Rebbe could give it to me, and I ask for it. But then they know it might be Plan B. I don't know if it's Plan A or Plan B. So when I daven, I say both. I daven for it, but then I also understand that it could be the Rebbe has a different plan. But there's another answer to it, that it's telling the madrega of the person. A simple person feels very, very strong their needs, and they ask the Rebbe should be mamale, should give it. A tzaddik, and there's a lot of levels, not like a simple person and a tzaddik. Someone that's in a higher matziv has the feeling a lot of times that he doesn't want anything. He just wants the Rebbe Shalom. Doesn't need anything. The Satmarov says in his Torah, in Divrei Yoel, that why did the Rebbe Shalom make that tzaddikim won't have children? The Avos, Avraham, all of them, Avraham and Sarah, Yitzchak, they were waiting for children. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ava L'Tfilasan Shel Tzadikim. So he says, why specifically with children? You could do anything to make them daven. So he says, no, because Tzadikim is very hard to get them to daven. Because whatever they're missing, they're happy with. They're Reb Zisha. So the Rebbe Shem knew that children is something that's very deep in the nefesh. Because if it's Hashem, it's whatever, that's why he knew that if he wants to get them to daven, it has to be something like that. Satmarov was, he had children, but when he said this Torah, I think he was childless already. He lost the children that he had. But it's a very deep memory. But I'll say in an interesting way, Ingeman once told me that he finds himself mixed up in the middle of davening. He starts davening that he wants something so badly. But then while he's davening, he's like thinking, who said it's good to me? Maybe I shouldn't daven. He said it in that way. So I found something fascinating about that. Tzaddikim say that it's something that's a direct result from the davening the person is davening. A person starts to daven when they're in a low madrega, because they're not connected to Hashem, they're going to connect. So they're coming with their pain. And in Rebbe Shalom, I need it so badly, but while they're davening, they're going up a darga. And because they're going up a darga while they're davening, because of the davening, that's when they feel, something? I'm not so sure I need it so badly. It could be not. Davening itself is bringing out that Havana by them. So they're davening to the Rebbe Shalom, but they're not anymore in stress that this should happen this second. And the davening itself is making that happen to the person. It's constantly this concept is there all the time, and our tafkid is that a person should understand, what we said earlier, the topic that we started off this year, the more elevated a person is, the less they're going to put categories into the matzav of Yisurim, of being Makabi Surah Bahava, the more they're going to be happy with their matzav the way it is. They're not going to see that it's a problem, and they're going to be able to handle the Zachar much, much better. And the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted the Torah Tefillah from the person should shine in, should elevate the matzavim of the person, which is small minded, like we called it. So that's slowly how a person could connect and absorb all the Divrei Torah that they learn.